Okay.
Woo!
Podcast is starting. I was just telling Janice about how I don't cut anything out of the podcast. So if we happen to be really boring, you guys will have to sit through it.
Yeah, Ozzy's the most boring person I know.
Janice is the least boring person I know.
Aw, thanks. I was just kidding.
You're fun. You have really good energy.
Thanks. You do too.
Thanks. Hi, welcome back to the show, Respectfully Inspired with Aussie Films. I like to start off every episode with my why behind the podcast, which is that I want to inspire you to invest in soul wealth. So not the classic wealth, which is building up your money, possessions, achievements, and or status, but measuring success by relationships and memories. Today, I'm here with Janice Journals. She is a blender. For people who don't know what blender is, could you go ahead and explain?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a 3D artist. It's more of like a hobby, but I'm something I'm very invested and passionate about. It's a 3D modeling platform. So you go into this software called Blender, and then you can literally model anything you want in 3D. So think of like Animal Crossing characters or like a low poly Apple, or like Pixar films. Those are all like made in softwares like Blender. So yeah, 3D art.
Yeah, 3D art. So she's a 3D artist. You're also a corporate America girl. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that.
Okay, yeah. So to also give some background, I work in corporate America as a consultant. I'm a enterprise software consultant, basically, working in tech. So that's also like my 9 to 5. And then Blender and 3D art and content is like my 5 to 9 outside of that. So,
But don't worry, guys. We're not going to talk about any corporate America stuff. So if you're worried about that, don't be worried. And I think as a final, you're kind of a member of the Anthpo army or whatever they call it.
the Anthpo cinematic universe, yes.
So you do a lot of different things.
Yeah, there's a lot of different stuff going on in my life. So now that I've graduated, like a few months ago, I've been trying to finding this new balance between work, content, and all of my friends. We're all kind of in like a new chapter of our lives.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
So my first question is, since you do so many things, you described it as a 9 to 5 and a 5 to 9. How do you make time for friends and things you enjoy? And do you feel like you have a good work-life balance?
I think as of now, I've been figuring that out. So I just got staffed to a project for work like 2 weeks ago. So this is all very recent. And like, to be honest, in the beginning, like literally up until last week, it was pretty bad. I had to cancel on a lot of social commitments.
Yeah.
But I consider like spending time with friends as almost kind of like as a part of my work, like my personal work, as much as I like do Blender stuff. So I consider that very important. Like I prioritize that. So if it means taking an hour away from my Blender work to hang out with friends or to FaceTime someone, I will.
Yeah, me and Janice were just talking about the trait of being interruptible, which, to explain it to the viewers, essentially is you live your life in such a way that you will let your work be interrupted. Because like the thing in America is working so hard so that your dreams will come true and that you can make a lot of money, and people are even talking about focus. And I don't want this to sound like an anti-focus rant, because
No, of
I think focus is so important. But I think oftentimes we idolize ourselves in our work and we kind of glorify busyness. And so we end up hitting our daily objectives or our to-do list, but we sacrifice relationships. And as the message of the soul wealth on this podcast, I often think, what for? I always ask myself, why? If I'm making all this money, or if I'm grinding, or if I'm doing this, why? Because it's so common to just live in the future, which I think you're really good at being interruptible. Like you have pretty much 2 full-time jobs, but
thanks.
you answer my calls and you make time for your friends. So that is a really good trait.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that I kind of stand by is that I watched this reel one time where this girl was doing like a little skit about like working and relationships, And this one line that really stuck with me was, jobs don't love you, people love you. And so I think ever since hearing that, I was like, yeah, that's so true. Like, you could work as hard as you want. You can work your like butt off.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's not your job that loves you. It's not your promotion that loves you. It's the people that love you and give you that warmth and like that energy and like just feeling human. So that's kind of like how I've shifted my mindset around work and then prioritizing relationships versus my productivity.
It's interesting. There's a quote I've been hearing a lot recently, which is, most people love things and use people, but if you want a happy life, you should love people and use things. And those people use things, or most people love things and use people.
Right.
But if you want a happy life, you should use things to love people. Yeah, I don't know if I said that the best.
I totally get that. I think it's like the difference between like being a bit materialistic, I guess, like if you love things and you use people to get to that materialistic, like stepping over people or like, you know, like dog eat dog world kind of a thing to get what you want versus, I guess like using different tools or even like different means, like even like videos or art or creation to connect better with people. And I feel like that's the difference.
Yeah. The interesting part of that quote is how you define things. Because I think a thing is not just a material thing. Like a thing can be a job. It's like, oh, I really want to be a big time podcaster. So therefore, I'm going to exploit all my friends and try to get the biggest interviews and get the biggest things but if my goal is to use people so that I can be a big time podcaster, then I think I would be much less fulfilled than if my goal was to use podcasting to make better relationships. And you might not even know the difference as a viewer. Like it's all internal, you know, and it's almost the same thing where it's like people maybe have a 9 to 5 and they come home from work and at home, all they're thinking about is work or the next project. And it's funny because we have a friend, I'm not gonna say his name, but Chris was telling us about our friend who said he knows if he likes a girl because when he goes on a date with the girl, he's thinking about the timeline. So what that means is he's a video creator and the timeline's like where you edit your video. And he goes, I know I'm on a good date if I'm not thinking about the timeline.
If he's not thinking about work, you know that he's enjoying it.
But that's really interesting from a creator perspective, especially me. I mean, I'm not just a podcaster, I vlog too. And one of the things I really struggled with when vlogging was how do I vlog and not make it I always used to say, I don't vlog because I have an exciting life. I vlog so that I can have an exciting life. Because so what that means is it's not like I'm doing fun stuff all the time. So I'm like, dude, I should be vlogging this. It's like, I want to vlog so that it encourages me to go do fun stuff.
Totally. I think the art of vlogging makes it so that there's an aspect where it's kind of like, oh, what can I try that would be exciting? Or what is something that I can try today that I can include in my vlog? And I think that would be interesting to talk about, you know? I feel like there's a fine line because I think a lot of people, when they vlog, they can tend to be like a little bit inauthentic or try to like make it seem like they have a more interesting life than they already do. But I think there's like a really good balance hit between using documenting to kind of create that path for yourself. Like either way, like I'm fully in support of that because, you know, as a member of like the ACU, I've seen it a lot where it's like, okay, like this is really interesting. And it's only interesting because it's kind of being documented. Like no one would do this if it wasn't being shared almost, you know? So it's interesting.
I want to jump in and explain what the ACU is to the audience. So basically there's a YouTuber named Anthpo. You can look him up. And he went to Rutgers, whereas she went to college.
Classmates.
And he made YouTube videos. I don't even know how to describe the niche, so I'm not going to attempt to describe it. But basically it was videos with friends in college where they do crazy adventures, unique stories. And she was a part of that process for at least a year or two. And I guess my question based on this conversation is, do you think your college experience would have been more or less fun if you weren't in someone's videos all the time?
I don't think it would have been less fun because I think fun is very subjective,
Yeah.
but I definitely had very interesting experiences. And like, for example, the whole road trip, I don't think I would have gone on a road trip if it weren't for him extending the invite to go infiltrate a cult or interview Bigfoot believers or stay a night at the Conjuring house, you know?
Yeah, but
That's totally something you can do, like, with your own, like, on your friends. But I'm not normally, like, you could totally do that without documenting it and put it on YouTube. But I wouldn't be the one to initiate that because that's not my ideal of fun.
Yeah.
But, you know, because he was like, oh, do you want to try it? And I am open to having new experiences. I was like, yeah, this would be fun. Like, why not?
I think it's interesting. You're probably right about fun. Maybe fun is more of an internal thing because two people can do the same activity and one person can be like, that was so fun, and one person can be like, that was not fun. But I do think that when you're surrounded by creators or people creating, it can be a very powerful tool in creating memories, which is half the
Definitely.
equation of soul wealth. Because you just named all these absurd things like interviewing Bigfoot believers and starting a K-pop band, and I think that's interesting. And even to speak on it, when I was a vlogger in college, I vlogged too. My videos weren't as good as Anthony's, but I did it. And I left school, dropped out, and I was like, I'm going all in on YouTube. I'm going to have all this time to make the best videos in the world. And one of the things I realized was that I had a lot more time to create, but I didn't have the environment or the people. So even though I dropped out and was like way more all in on YouTube, I realized that YouTube was actually more than it was a passion for me, myself, it was a tool for me to have better memories with the people I was with. Because when I was doing it alone, I no longer enjoyed it.
Interesting.
And that's why I really switched to the podcast, is because the podcast, at the very least, I'm with one person every episode. So I get to make a relationship, I get to make a memory. Whereas a lot of times with vlogs, even when people were in the videos, it was like me editing them alone, me posting them alone, me coming up with the concept alone. The majority of it was alone.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
really interesting. Well, I think your vlogs are great. So don't put yourself down for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's also part of the craft. Like, I think part of the craft is like the excuse almost to be with people, right? Like for you, it's podcasting, so you feel a lot less alone. You get to have people and friends over, do it together, create a shared memory, create a memory. And like for me, for example, like I like to make coffee with friends. And so that's like my form of like art where I get to create coffee, but it's also really nice because I get to invite my friends over. And I guess like the quote unquote excuse is, I'll make coffee for you and like I'd love to share it with you, so come over. And so it's just like a really nice bonding moment because it's something that I really love as an art and as a craft, and that's you in vlogging or you in podcasting. So it's different mediums to connect with people, which I think is really nice and something that, you know, once people discover what their own craft or art is, then they get to share that with others.
It's interesting. You never made me coffee.
We've only been together in like a poly space like twice.
I also,
This is my second time seeing Ozzy in person, by the way.
wow. Okay, well, both
I can't create coffee for you
both
this
times
time.
for an extended amount of days. I don't actually drink coffee, but I'm not like never coffee. I drink it like once a month so that it's almost like a drug. Like when I drink coffee, it's like
A drug?
It's like cocaine when I drink coffee because I have so little caffeine that when I do have it, I'm like, but I like to keep it that way.
I'll give you decaf. I'll give you matcha.
No, I want to rave off whatever you
want to rave off.
I'm just saying, one of these
Okay.
days this week, you're going to make me coffee and I'm going to go berserk.
Done.
I believe I heard somewhere that you have a dream of owning a coffee shop.
Oh, heard through the grapevine.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yes. So, okay. This is something that I don't really talk about much on my own creative content channel and stuff because I believe it's fun to have more hidden hobbies or like hobbies you don't make like a career or full like content out of. But coffee is one of those passions for me. And one thing that, really got me into coffee was I judged for the U.S. Coffee Championships.
Wait, what? Oh no, you need to explain this whole world.
Wait, I didn't tell you this.
What is the U.S. Coffee Championship?
I can't believe
Please explain to them what a U.S. Coffee Championship is.
Okay, so basically in the world of coffee, there's something called the U.S. Coffee Championships. So if you know like James Hoffman or Morgan Eckroth, like they're like world championships, or they're world like barista champions, and it's kind of like a tier. You start off local, move on to regional, then national, then international. It's where baristas from all over the world come to compete in different categories, from barista to coffee with spirits, which is alcohol, or just regular like brewed coffee. So there's different categories, and they compete in those categories, and then they move up the ranks when they compete.
But what does a win look like? It tastes the best?
It's actually really interesting because half of it is a performance. The other half is the technicals of the coffee. So did they clean well? Did they not waste any coffee beans? Did they, what were their measurements looking like? What was their times looking like? The other half is they get to tell a story, or like they get to talk to the judges as if they were a customer at the cafe that they work at or whatever. And they get to talk to them and tell a story. And so it's really interesting and crazy how while they're making this coffee, they explain why they chose this bean to make their drink, why they're making this sort of drink, like why they're using coconut cream, why they're putting in Coca-Cola, or like how they're using all these different ingredients, and telling a story through coffee and their craft of making coffee. And so their performance and their entire story is very much tied into the criteria and the judging.
Dude, I'm mind blown.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
This is one of those moments where there's a whole world that I don't know about. And this happens quite a lot at base camp, but...
Yeah.
Okay, so half of it's judged on their performance, which is their style, their efficiency, cleaning,
that's the technical part.
Oh, that's the technical. And then the performance is
their storytelling.
And
their backstory,
is there no taste aspect?
Oh, that is part of the technical. That's more like the sensory part. So I guess there's three parts. So there's the technical, and then there's the sensory, which is like, does it taste good? Is there a good balance between the milk and the coffee and the bitterness, sweetness, acidity? It's a whole science.
You were a judge.
I was a judge.
Yeah, take me through that experience.
So, I judged for the first time around a year ago, actually, last October.
Yeah.
Had zero coffee experience. Drank instant coffee for 21 years of living.
It's just out of the womb, started slamming coffee.
Exactly.
Okay.
Straight out of the womb. And so, since this was my senior year of college and I really wanted to immerse myself in exploring my own interests and hobbies, I thought, what better way to get to know coffee better, this drink I love, than getting to know it better through judging. So my friend and I sent a cold email over to the organizers of the coffee championships, and we're like, hey, we would love to volunteer and judge for this. So we have no coffee experience, but we'd be willing to, learn as much as we can, go through like the training, whatever is required. And they said, yeah, we put all of our judges through a day of training, and we are looking for volunteers, so you guys can come help us out. Yeah. So we drove down to Richmond, Virginia, where the preliminaries were happening. We went through a day of tasting espressos, just drinking lots of different coffee, synchronizing with the other judges, and like training our taste buds. And I think that was a very eye-opening experience for me, because it was very much like a mix of science and art. Mm-hmm. And you get to taste it too, which is really fascinating. Like you get to consume what someone's created, literally.
I have a number of thoughts. I guess I'll lead with, now, do you have the ability when you drink coffee to like distinguish between really, if I were to hand you a random cup of coffee, could you like break it down?
Yeah, so basically there's different flavor notes in the
Yeah.
coffee. And there's different notes, like there's like citrusy or like fruity notes. There's more like bitter, chocolatey notes. There's also like sweeter, maybe marshmallow type of notes. And so you take a sip and then you kind of evaluate that. And you kind of evaluate it based on like when you first drink it, when it's in your mouth versus like the aftertaste. So there's a lot of different elements that go into it. And even like the texture too. Like, is the espresso like thick and syrupy? Is it like more thin and watery? That's all part of the criteria.
So, like, the thing I'm thinking about is when I was in high school and I would write essays for English, and then my teacher would give it a grade, and I'd be like, how do you grade this? It's so subjective.
Yeah.
I always thought English grades were really stupid. I mean, and like there's some stuff that makes sense, like punctuality,
Yeah.
grammar. So what makes a coffee? What makes citrus better? Or like why?
So actually, here's the interesting thing. When it comes to flavor, right? It's actually kind of like a game of, can you taste what I want you to taste? Because here's the thing. For preliminaries, everyone chooses between 3 different coffee beans. So you get to pick which beans you want to use.
Yeah.
So when you get to more advanced nationals, like international, you get to bring whatever bean you want. But when you're first starting out, everyone is on the same playing field. So the way that you create flavors in coffee is you manipulate the different settings on the machine when you actually brew the espresso to create certain flavor notes. So if you have like the amount of coffee in the water for a longer time or shorter time, that creates a more like bitter or creates a more sweeter like taste. It has different flavors. So when you are making espresso, even if the flavors aren't actually there, like I could tell you this espresso that I'm giving you will taste like citrus.
Yeah.
The citrus isn't actually there, but it's created through the brew time or the amount of beans I use or how fine you grind them. So it's a whole science. That's why it's a whole science, because you get to craft that through the process. And then you have to be experienced and knowledgeable enough to know that, okay, this is what I taste, and so this is what I want the judges to taste.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the grading of this really is, have you done a good job and have you perfected this process enough to, if you tell me I'm going to taste jasmine floral, I will taste jasmine floral instead of tasting chocolate chip or cardamom.
So the way they eliminate subjectivity, or probably they can't eliminate it completely, but the way they lessen it is that the creator has a vision. So you're judging them on their vision.
Yeah.
How well they can create their vision.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Dude, viewers are going to learn a lot about coffee. It's
fascinating. It's so fascinating.
Most people drink coffee, so this is good.
Aw.
Yeah.
I know you're going for the fist pump.
Oh, wait,
but
what were you going to do? Like a hand hug? Or?
yeah, I was going to do like a fist pump or like a high five.
Oh, okay. Did we not do that?
No, we did, but you're like this. You're doing like a little okay sign. So I don't know what you're going for.
Oh, my bad.
But but yeah, that's why I got really into coffee last year. And so since then, I was thinking back to your original question.
Wait, before you answer this, because I know you're going to tell me about your coffee shop dream, include if you want to compete in the competition too.
I've been thinking about that. I think I would want to compete maybe in like the latte art category or...
And that's where you make the like leaves and stuff.
Yeah, the leaves, the swans. It was really funny because someone made a corgi butt for like their latte art and they actually won.
Oh, wow.
So I thought that was really...
Well, can you make latte art this week for me?
I can't do latte art yet, but I'll try. I can do a little teddy bear.
Teddy bear? That's advanced. I thought, can you do a leaf? That's like the beginner.
No.
The leaves are hard.
Yeah, leaves are hard. I'm still trying to get used to it.
Okay. All right, go into your coffee shop dream.
My coffee shop dream, I think it'd be really cool to have like a all-in-one building. It's very utopian from what I'm imagining, but my friends and I would do this with like a group of friends. Like it would be a coffee shop in one, a like PC bang or like a game room, like a bunch of like computers in like another one, a bakery in another floor, like kind of just like an all-in-one building. And so I would be the floor that has the coffee shop.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
I
I
have a
have
lo-fi jazz, like a lo-fi coffee bar.
I have a coffee shop idea. I don't know if I want to reveal it to the public though, because I actually think it's so good that I'm worried someone would steal it.
Okay, well, do you want to share it with
We can discuss
everyone listening here?
We can discuss it off camera.
Hey, offline.
Yeah. All right.
Give us a hint. Give us a hint.
I would say it involves chess, but it involves coffee and chess. I'm sure anyone could think of playing chess in a coffee shop, but I'll break it down for you off camera why it's a good idea. Okay, if it don't let them know. I want to do a topic shift. We talked a little bit about being an introvert and an extrovert. Outside of sleep and taking a nap, where do you find rest?
Oh, I was not prepared for that question. That's deep. Where do I find rest? I like to nap a lot. Like, napping has kind of been...
Yeah, but no nap, no sleep.
No nap, no sleep. Okay, I mean, well, napping has genuinely helped me, like, recharge.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, more rest as in...
like, more internally, like, rest.
Yeah, because everyone will feel rested after sleeping or a nap. But we're talking about, like, how we had discussed on FaceTime a week or so ago, how extroverts sometimes get rest from people and introverts sometimes get rest from being alone.
Well, I'm both. So taking a nap is me being alone.
Yeah.
So that act genuinely it recharges me just beyond, the physical act of getting sleep. But I do, because I am both, I do find rest in talking with friends because sometimes I realize that I think I can get in my head sometimes and overthink about certain things when I'm particularly stressed or when there's a lot of things going on. So whenever even if it's a quick FaceTime call, I find that it brings me out of my own head.
Yeah.
And it kind of helps me ground myself. And that's really helpful. And I feel like that gives me a lot of rest because it's kind of like this is who I am. This is why my friends love me. This is what they like about me. And this is how I feel about myself. And so having your friends like be your support system, even if they're just calling in to check in on you is so I don't know. I feel very energized afterwards because of that.
Yeah. I think to elaborate on the beginning of the podcast, how we were talking about overworking versus relationships, I was in a real big self-help phase, reading David Goggins' book, watching self-help all the time.
Classic.
Grinding. I'm sure as many of our friends share this trait, and probably you too. And I always thought time is directly correlated to productivity. Like, you put more hours in, you get more out. And I actually found out that when I take hours out of working to be with people, that I'm a more efficient worker. And it's interesting because now, like 2 years ago, the self-help wave was wake up at 4 a.m., wake up at 4 a.m., wake up at 4 a.m.
The grind set.
And now there's a new self-help wave that says, don't wake up at 4 a.m., get perfect sleep. And the idea is that if you're well rested, you'll be more efficient during your hours. And I find the same thing for people, that when I'm with people, it's not everyone, because I think there's certain people that drain you. But when I'm with people that give me energy, I find that I'm more efficient. That's why I think the idea of base camp, which for the audience that doesn't know, me and Janice are currently at an event called Base Camp, thrown by a company called Creator Camp, where it's basically a week-long WeWork for 50 creators in the woods of Oregon.
Yeah,
And
we're right here.
It's interesting because I'm probably taking a lot less hours of work every day because I have so many people I want to connect with and talk with and make friends. Yet by the end of this week, I'm probably going to have done 8 or 9 podcasts in 1 week, which is way more than my regular output. And that's kind of a biased thing because I have way more opportunity to film podcasts. But I do think it's interesting how we're more efficient when we're well rested, and I feel better rested when I'm with people I love. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
So that's your definition of rest. Like, you are surrounded by people that you really like, and you get to create these like memories with them and like experiences.
Yeah, I think too, sometimes people think that extroverts just get rest from people or they get their energy from people. And I don't necessarily think it's that easy. I think that you get rest from people that you feel like you can be yourself around. And just because you like someone doesn't necessarily mean that they give you energy or give you rest. Because there's been times where I've traveled with people or I've hung out with people that I really like. But they're not, for some reason, I feel like I can't fully be myself. So maybe I'm hanging out with a coworker and I really like my coworker, but I know that I can't say everything because they're my coworker. I can't talk about politics, or I can't talk about controversial opinions or religion with my coworkers. So to a degree, I don't feel like I can fully be myself. So even though I like that person a lot, it's not a situation that gives me rest. Like when I think about what gives me rest, it's generally either like my very best friends or situations like base camp where I feel like all the people here have the weird, crazy creator mindset that I have. So it's so much easier to relate to people here than people in my daily life. So it feels like a big rest.
No, I totally relate to that. I think for me, just because we're extroverts doesn't mean that it's just everyone. Yeah. It's like, I totally agree. Like, it's just people who you can feel like you can be yourself around. Yeah. That is like, oh, I can be comfortable here. I don't have to put up energy or like put in the energy to get to know them, which is definitely nice to do sometimes when you have like the energy, but it's nice to just kind of be like at ease and just have regular conversations without like the expectation of, rushing to get to know them or like trying to really get to know them too quickly or things like that. So it's just nice to be around and like be yourself around people and not have any like expectations weighing down.
Oh, dude, you really just, I thought you were about to get really scared by that bee, but you just looked it in the face and let it fly off.
Oh yeah, no, I'm okay with bees.
I'm okay with bees as well. Another interesting thing that maybe you'll find interesting, maybe not, is, so I get really fueled by good conversations. And almost all my podcasts are great conversations, but my podcasts don't fuel me. If I were to have the same conversation off camera as on camera, I'd feel much more rested by the conversation off camera. And I think...
Ooh, how's that? Why so?
I've tried to hyper-analyze it. Iverson.
Our friend Iverson is talking to his grandma right now.
I've tried to think why that is, and I've come to the conclusion that I really love my audience. I don't create for my audience because I think that this is hard. I love my audience, and so in a sense, I want to make the best possible product for them. But because of the soul wealth and my brand mission, I'm not going to let them determine my success. So I'm not going to say, oh, my podcast is successful because it went viral or it got likes or it got views. But at the same time, I want to make the best possible product for them because I love them and I love the art. And if you love an art, you should want to do it at its highest capability. And so I think that even if I have a great conversation off camera and on camera, the second I sit down, I feel like I'm performing. And so it's the same thing where you might be love theater, and you go and do a theater show for 3 hours. You don't finish the show and be like, I'm freaking amped, like that gave me energy, You're like, I loved it, but it was draining because I gave my all to the craft. And I try to treat podcasting the same way. I try to be like, yes, it's a conversation, and yes, my goal is to make it feel like a conversation, make you feel and flow, and that as if the camera was off. But I have multiple things going. I'm thinking about you, I'm thinking about the camera, I'm thinking about the audience, I'm thinking about and so in that way, the podcast can be very draining, even though I love it a lot.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that just means you're being very conscientious of all aspects of it. And like, this is what you love. You love having conversations. You love spending time with people. And so as with any quote unquote work, you appropriately put in that amount of thinking into it. And I feel like that's not a bad thing. Like, just because you think you should really like it doesn't mean that it can't be draining and it can't take up your energy, you know? So I don't think that's a bad thing.
Oh, I don't think it's bad either. I actually think it's the sign that you care about what you're doing. And recently I've been studying speech because growing up I was not really good at speaking and I mumbled a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just the Southern California accent or insecurity.
Oh.
But I've been watching speech coaches on YouTube and taking notes. And one of the speech coaches I really like on YouTube said, which helped me a lot, is that if you care about your speech, think about it as caring about the people you talk to. Because you're basically trying to, if you want to, if you really care about the people you're talking to, you'd want it to be as easy for them to consume what you're saying or to evaluate. And it's not that people who don't care about their speech, like, don't care about who they're talking to, but I thought that's a really interesting lens to think from.
Definitely. I think even when I think about the way that, you know, certain conversations with other of my friends, when they are trying to explain something to me and they put in the effort of trying to explain it in the simplest way possible or in a way that I would understand, like, that's a craft. Like, I think communication is a skill. We're not all just good at it just because we can talk. You know, you gotta actively think about the other person and like how they would best understand it.
Well, I can give you an interesting example of this. I don't want to get too far into it because I dove so heavily into it on the Nico podcast.
Okay.
Because Nico, a couple episodes, he's from Alabama, which means he has a very intense accent. But, and we talked about this, so this is not an insult. It's just, it's a truth.
Okay.
Is that we create stereotypes for how people sound. So if you hear an intensely Alabama accent, you'll think someone's a little stupider. If you
stereotypes,
hear a nice British accent, you'll think someone's a little smarter. If you hear a heavy New York accent, you'll think someone's a little angrier, more annoyed. And so while we can't change our accent that much, what it tells us is that speech affects the way people think about you.
Totally.
So if you care about your perception and what people think about you, which now that I say it, it sounds bad because, you know, what people think about you is you don't want to be obsessed with that. But I think from a perspective of communication, caring about your speech will affect how you come off, which I think
definitely. There is this one Dan Brown book that I was reading. I think it was called, I forget what it was called. It's like Originals or something like Origins. It was called Origins. But basically, Dan Brown, he wrote the DaVinci Code. It's one of the best books ever. But in one of his books, he has his Harvard professor going into a museum that his friend has organized. And this museum, it requires you to put on like a headset so that when you go around the museum, the headset automatically gives you the information and like it communicates like the information to you through the headset. It's like some like AI robot headset that they've personally developed. And so the headset that this man is wearing, it's like some white British dude like the headset. And so as he's meeting his friend, he's like, yo, this headset thing you did was so cool. Like, it was AI and like you like programmed it and everything. And he's like, yeah, it is really cool. And you know what's interesting is that I made it so that the AI voice that everyone gets, it's tailored to whoever they would kind of take seriously. Like for like woman, it's different. Like, or like for like him, because the character was like a white man, they made the AI robot a British man with like a London accent to give off the feeling of like the museum being like, you know, someone's educating you.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I just like read that and I was like, whoa, that's very interesting. And like everyone to their AI robot had a different voice that was tailored to who they would kind of like want to hear this museum like information and education from.
Well, you know what is another interesting thing that you could go into is our expectations via platform. So if you go on TikTok or Instagram Reels, you're expecting to be entertained in the first 5 seconds. So therefore, you'll find that a majority of the people who perform well on those platforms talk like this. hey, I'm going to show you what's going to happen today. And because they're trying to entertain you in the first 5 seconds. But if you were to come on a podcast and I were to be like, welcome to my podcast with Janice Journals. Today you'd be like, that's so weird because your expectation is
Welcome back to Aussie Films.
it's a lot slower.
Yeah.
And so our expectation for speech changes based on our setting and our consumption and the platform. It's really interesting to see how it changes in so many ways. I do want to ask you, because you said the DaVinci Code is one of the best books ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been using the platform DaVinci Resolve for my videos for like 4 years. And I don't know what it is. Could you explain it, or is it too hard?
It's a mystery, a bit of a mystery and thriller book.
Yeah.
So it basically follows this Harvard professor who studies symbols.
Yeah.
And there are some things happening within, like, I think it's like the Roman Church,
Yeah.
or some kind of really big religious institution. And basically he follows like these symbols to unlock the mystery. And the DaVinci Code is about this like famous painting. I forget. It's been a very long time since I've read it, but it basically follows like a bunch of symbols and like clues to unlock the mystery of like the Mona Lisa,
Yeah.
or some famous painting like that. I don't remember, but a lot of the times it kind of delves really deep into a lot of themes such as religion,
Yeah.
or like gender, or like society, through, studying these symbols or like paintings and things like that. So it's like a really good book for like history buffs or people who are really into like religion, or like unlocking like the secrets or like mysteries behind a lot of historical events.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was a time in your life where you had a belief and it was completely changed, either by a person or a thing or a book?
Ooh, okay. So it was when I used to be a really big people pleaser.
Yeah.
That was kind of a belief, right? Like,
Yeah.
I thought if I help others, they would value me.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's how I operated, like, for the longest time, ever since I was like a kid to maybe like starting in high school, like where I kind of realized that was like shattered. It was 'cause in middle school, I genuinely just didn't have any friends.
Yeah.
And like, I thought that being a people pleaser would make me friends, right? But while that did get me, some surface level friendships, they weren't actual friendships. Like, I was still kind of friendless at the end of the day, because all the relationship is just how can they use me, or how can I help them? And that, I feel like, was shattered at some point when I also went through my self-help era back in high school. And I realized to myself, like, whoa, I didn't realize that I was behaving this way. Like, I genuinely had no idea I was operating like that. Like, it's just something I subconsciously did, because deep down, I felt like I didn't have any friends.
Yeah.
And so once I started reading a little bit more, once I just started like trying to grow myself, I realized, oh, this is what I'm doing. And so once I started trying to focusing more on myself, I realized that your relationships shouldn't be built on what others can do for you or what you can do for others, but based on shared and common values. So that was a big shift for me in terms of how I go about friends, how I go about not being a people pleaser. At the end of the day, I still love to help my friends.
Yeah.
And I appreciate their help for me too. But that's not what makes our relationship special.
See, that's a really interesting, because I want to challenge you on that thought, because I'm a very, very big advocate for living selflessly and going out of your way to help people as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think the issue is not helping people. I think the issue is the expectation behind it. So, I mean, I'm a Christian and they know that. But like in the Bible, it says when you give with your right hand, your left hand shouldn't even know what you're giving. And so I think I used to be the same way, where I would help people. When you have the people pleaser mindset, it's what you're creating is a transactional relationship. It goes, if I do this for this person, then I will get their love or I will get their approval. a lot of people fall into this with like romantic partners where they go like, oh, I'm going to show them the world. Or I'm going to give them this or that, or give them so much attention. And they'll pour all this attention to their romantic partner, and then they'll convince themselves that their romantic partner doesn't like them because it's not reciprocated. And that may be true or it may not be true, but you already lost the second you lost the second you said, I'm going to give you something and I expect it in return.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the issue with the people pleaser mentality. And that's, I'm a huge advocate for helping others and expecting nothing.
It's doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Even as a people pleaser, you're expecting that.
Because
Something
it's
in
a
return.
selfish thing. But when you're a people pleaser, you don't ever think of it as selfless. You think of it as selfless. You think, oh, I'm doing all these things and these people don't love me.
Yeah.
I used to be very
It's unfair.
depressed in high school. And one of my biggest struggles with depression was I felt like all my friends didn't like me. And one of the reasons I felt like all my friends didn't like me is because I was very aware of everything I did for them. And if they didn't do equal for me, I was like, oh, they don't like me. And now that I'm way more confident in myself and I have way more love for myself and I get my primary source of love from God, I always go out of my way to help others, but I just think nothing of it. I actually I try my best to almost not forget like I'm aware, but just do it and move on. And I found it's so funny because when you do it, and this is something Chris really taught me, is when you do it and expect nothing is when it always comes back to you. And I think that just like God, the universe, how he set it up is giving. If you want to give and then get, then do it and have no expectations. I just think that God, the universe, he knows your heart behind it. And I thought that was really interesting.
No, that's so true. I think that is a very healthy way to go about relationships and like yourself as well. Like when you do things for other people, you shouldn't expect anything in return if that's where you're coming from a genuine place of just appreciation or love or like friendship. And I feel like that's something we've realized, like we come out of our people pleaser phase, and the more we mature as we grow older and like we have access to more resources, we have more things that we can do, like better skills. It's like, I think that's all the more important to remember and keep in mind.
This is a curveball, but what have you learned about love, if anything?
Whoa. Okay. What have I learned about love?
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me in terms of like romantic love is you should never plan something with someone, you know, planning like to get in a relationship or like thinking, oh, I want them to be my boyfriend or girlfriend based on their potential. Like you should always love them as they are already.
That was, you briefly talked to me about that yesterday, and that was something I really struggled with is, and we just heard about a friend who his girlfriend had broken up with him because she basically believed that their two life paths would be different in the future. And then a couple months later, her vision for her own future wasn't fulfilled. And she was like, I wish I had stayed with my boyfriend. And I had the opposite thing where I would like refrain from letting myself be too into my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend, because I thought like, oh, I'm going to drop out of school and I'm going to travel the world and like, this probably won't work out. And the thing is not if your thoughts are right or wrong, but I think, like you said, when you get to a point where you're planning or you're living in the future, no one knows what your future is. We don't even know what tomorrow is, you know? We can assume that we'll be here. Who knows? Maybe someone's going to say, let's go take a road trip and be somewhere. So if you don't even know what tomorrow is, who are you to plan in your relationship or think that you know the future?
It's also unfair to date someone or get into a relationship with someone expecting them to change. It's like it's not fair to them, in my opinion. Nor is it healthy to you, because then you have this expectation of someone and they don't live up to those expectations. It's not fair to either of you guys. Yeah.
One time me and Chris on the low never boasted this, but we used to go knock on mansions in San Diego and film podcasts with mansion owners. And one guy who was like an 80-year-old grandpa told us, we asked him for advice about love. He said, do you guys know yourself? And at the time I said, no, not really. And it wasn't that I wasn't confident. I was just like, I was answering from the perspective of I'm pretty young, so I'm pretty sure my perception of myself is going to change. And Chris said the same thing, and he said, well, if you don't know yourself, how are you possibly going to pick the right person?
Oh.
But I don't know how I feel about that, because part of me is like, damn, you're so right. Like, why would I even care about finding a partner right now when I'm in a phase of completely changing year over year? But the other part of me is like, yeah, but that pattern is going to continue for the rest of life.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just have some age in mind where it's going to work out. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like relationships... Oh, oops. I feel like it's best in a relationship when you grow together.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to completely know everything about yourself, but you should have, or you probably have an idea of what you want to get better at. And I feel like your partner isn't there to serve as that purpose, but help grow with you. And that's the biggest thing that I really try to strive for in my relationships, is whether you both can grow together, or if I can grow with someone.
Yeah, that's interesting. Have you ever done the 5 types of love test or whatever?
Love languages?
Yeah.
Yes.
What is your love language?
Okay. Quality time.
Yeah.
Physical touch. Like I love hugs and like hand holding, things like that. Like it's just like it just like calms me a lot. And acts of service is a huge one as well. Those are my main 3.
I low-key have a gripe with the system. I have 2 gripes with the system. I've probably asked like 50 people this question, and the answers do vary, but there's 2 things that stay consistent. Is almost always people include physical touch, and almost never people include gift giving. And I think that my gripe with the system is that physical touch is such an easy answer, because if you're with a romantic partner, it's like the only person you're physical with. So it's like, who's going to be with a romantic partner and be like, I don't like physical touch? And I have had like 1 in 50 people be like, oh, I hate physical touch. But I feel like one of the flaws of that test is that physical touch is such an appealing answer for so many reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So almost everyone includes it. And then gift giving is such an unappealing answer, because even though it's a kind thing to do, it almost feels like a selfish thing. Like, my love language is getting gifts. It's like,
I don't think so. I mean, I could say I love gift giving as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know, getting each other food or buying someone flowers. Like, I think that's all like incorporated into the act of gift giving as a love language.
I don't know. This is just what I've noticed. And I just think that...
Do you think it's, is your gripe with physical touch that like that's just like a no-brainer?
My gripe is that, yeah, it's too no-brainer, and it's the same thing with like gift giving. The way you explain it, you're right. But I think the term gift giving, it's like you have all these other ones that sound so like fun or selfless. It's like quality time, physical touch, and then it's just gift giving.
Oh, there's words of affirmation. I forgot about that one.
So I think I did the test once, and mine was physical touch number 1, and then words of affirmation. I think an interesting thing to talk about is I think that most creators will be more likely to have words of affirmation, because if you're a serious creator, your whole life is creating for the internet. And I think a lot of people start off creating for validation. It's like, they can be passionate about something and they can create art, but like ultimately you wouldn't even post your art to the internet if you didn't want someone to like be impacted or say something about it. So if that's a trend, then naturally words of affirmation is so appealing, because like when you're posting videos or podcasts or music, you're like, what you want is people to like it. And so I did think the words of affirmation was quite fitting. And I also think though with physical touch that it's such a spectrum, because almost everyone I talk to says they love physical touch, but I'm like, this is gonna sound so stupid, but I'm like, you don't love it as much as me. I literally touch, I touch everyone. I touch all my friends all the time, and I'm like, there's just such a.
You said you don't like physical touch as much as I like physical touch.
I touch everyone all the time, to the point where people are like, dude, stop touching me. I touch my guy friends. I touch my. Yeah, I mean, I sound like weird right now, but I literally touch everyone all the time. So I'm like.
I mean, it can be as simple as like shoulder taps or I don't know, things like that. So now I understand.
I love touch. But anyways, I'll ask you my outro question, which is from the perspective of soul wealth. It's deep, so prepare. When you die, what do you want people to say about you?
Actually, I'm going to think about this for a second.
Podcast.
I've never thought about this.
That's good. You have good speaking confidence because the ability to be silent and take the extra second.
How we both just.
Actually, yeah, after you answer this question, don't let me forget that we need to do thumbnail poses.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I guess on top of my head, and maybe this is a basic answer, but genuinely, I just want people, like my close friends, family, to say she was such a good friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I want to hear that from my future kid or my partner, you know? Like, I don't want to, not that I don't want to hear, oh, she was such a good mom or things like that. It's like, I want them to feel like I was genuinely someone who they could feel like they were on equal standing with, regardless of, you know, like our relationship, our age, like things like that.
You know what it makes me think of? I'm sure you've probably read How to Win Friends and Influence People. So there's a chapter.
Self-help book.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest self-help books of all time. And there's a chapter where it opens and it's talking about a dog. It's like, do you know how excited dogs are to see their owner? Every time I come home, my dog runs up to me at the door. Like, dogs, all they live for is two things, which is food and loving their humans. Like, they literally are just so excited to see you when you're gone. And I remember in the book, he says, if you want, everyone loves their dog. I mean, not dog, like, there's people who just don't like dogs, but, you know, dog people are dog people. And why does everyone like their dogs? It's because their dog's always excited to see them. And something I write in my journal, I do a weekly review of my life, and every week I write, be extremely excited to see everyone, be extremely excited. But I'm not like an overtly excited person.
You give dog energy.
But I was going to say, out of almost everyone I know, you're one of the people who's just always excited to see everyone. And I remember just walking into base camp a couple of days ago, and you just jumped up and gave me a hug, and I was like, wow, like, that feels good. Like, you're excited. So I think you're living out that mission a lot. And
thanks, man.
We'll wrap it up there. Let's take some, we'll hug after, but let's take do some, you can do a couple different poses. All right.
Okay. Oh, damn it. Was that a flop?
No, that was good. I liked it.
As you thought it would be? I'm just kidding.
58. Okay, right.